spoken to you a couple of times before about Swift and the stuff I've done at Swinburne. This time I'm going to talk about user-centered design, which is a different unit. And the thing that really attracted me to this particular unit was the fact that it's a methodology that delivers a return on investment. Now, how you can measure this return on investment is either by stickiness of your app, so people don't drop out during the onboarding process, or once they're on, they stay and they become net promoters. And the other way you measure it is you get 0 calls to the help desk or 0 emails to you about bugs and stuff like that. So that's the return on investment. You've got a good design, it's solid, and people like it. So my approach to all of this was, I had years of developing stuff, project managing, program managing, and you always ended up in battles where different people had opinions about what was the good design for this particular client. And it would become a battle about fonts and colors and logos and stuff like that. And so when I went to Dub in 2019 and organized the Melbourne CocoaHeads breakfast there, thank you, Sean, for coming along, I also enrolled myself in Layers, which was a designers conference. And Amy's been to it as well, and it's pretty good. Best conference for drinks. Best conference for the after party. But they are strange people. Except for this guy. Does anyone recognize him? Someone in this room should, because they paid for you to go to NS Spain to present. So he's the key organizer, Louis, of the NS Spain conference in Europe for Swift. Hence the t-shirt. So I came back from that particular event, and Swinburne said, would you like to get involved with UCD? And I said, sure. And I discovered something absolutely marvelous. It's a methodology based on an ISO approach. The diagram shows how you iterate your project through the design phases. We do it with a bunch of students. I've now run around about 300 undergraduates and postgraduates through my particular set of tutorials. And it basically works around an iterative design. So we give them a project brief. Now, if you want, we will take pro bono work from people. So if you've got something that you would like taken through this process, we'd be happy to work with you. We had someone last year who publishes an app. They came to us and said they wanted to do a new version of it. Basically, we split 40% of the students handled the creative side of the app, and the other 60% of the students handled the consumer side of the app. And we ran sort of a competition of, which was the best of breed out of each of those two streams, and then presented that to the client. We promote iteration. We provide a case study to kick the project teams off, which is basically, the project brief from the client, if we have one, and interviews with people who are prospective users who are having difficulties with something in their lives at the moment. And this provides us the data for which we can then iterate the design. We support a large range of tools such as Balsamiq, Adobe, Sketch, Sigma, and even slides as a prototyping method. The first projects we break into 3 phases. The first phase is sort of understanding the problem space. It's all about analysis. We get the students to produce a series of models. The persona model, what is the person, what are their needs and wants, what are their skills, roles and attributes, where do they tend to use this particular application, what is its context, social, physical and technical. Once they've done that degree of analysis, we proceed to, let's do some conceptual designs. Of course, lots of people immediately want to rush to, well, let's do wireframes. But what we try to encourage them to do is instead do a storyboard around a cartoon strip. What am I as a user now struggling with? What are my problems? if I had this thing, what could be better? So we're kind of defining the benefit statement through a storyboard. And then we take their conceptual design and we put it through 2 gates. The first gate is me looking at the design and applying a methodology like contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. So is there enough contrast between the different elements on the screen? Are the UI elements all aligned and neat and tidy? Do we have repetition where things that are of a similar category are all lumped together? And do we have proximity of, when I'm done this, do I go here? So it's a fairly simple, basic methodology. And then they iterate that design and produce their first sort of workable prototype. And they then take their prototype and show it to another team. And then they do a tag team and the other team reverses that round. And typically we ask them to use Jakob Nielsen's heuristics. The most valuable part of this presentation, by the way, is the last slide, which has the references to Nielsen, references to CRAP, and the references to some other things that I'll cover in a second. Did I just go backwards? I think I did. So Nielsen's heuristics are these kind of things. Does the app give you, as a user, visibility of the system status? Where you are in the world, what you're trying to do, how far you've progressed through your task. Is there a match between the jargon of the system and what you as a human being talk about? So for example, this semester has been an app around solar panels. So do you measure the performance of the solar panel in terms of kilowatts, or dollars saved, or trees, carbon saved? What is it that's going to be useful for the user to be motivated to use the app? And so we go all the way through. There are in fact 10. This was first published about 20 years ago and was oriented around web usage. And since then, the Nielsen group have been enhancing it for things like video games, complex applications. I think there are 13 attributes when they look at mobile apps. And the latest piece of work is around virtual reality. And we'll know more about that after dub, won't we? I had to look at someone. And I know if I'd looked at Amy, it would have gone. So phase 3 involves each of the teams taking their prototype after they've received 2 lots of feedback and they've tweaked it. And we're going to put them in front of some real people. Now, in the case of when we have a sponsoring client, it can be real people. But in the case of if it's just a student case study, it's family and friends. And we conduct a series of tests, and the tests are around, for this particular app, what are the key tasks? So for the solar panel app, it was, how much is my solar panel performing by today? Am I taking power off the grid? What do I have to switch off to stop taking power off the grid? What do I have to bank away into my battery? That kind of stuff. Another app was a carer app. Where is the person that I'm caring for? When is their medication due? When should I administer it? That kind of scenario. So we asked them to develop about 5 to 10 key tasks, and then they give that briefing to each one of their participants, and then we measure how those participants proceed through the app. And they do that in a usability lab. So the usability lab is a bit like a detective scenario. We have the project team on one side of a one-way mirror, and the participants on the other side, and with the participant is a facilitator who's helping them along, and if you get stuck, saying, don't worry, it's our app that's wrong. It's not you, the user, who's made a mistake. It's our bad design. Thank you for the input. You're smiling. And at the end, we measure by a thing called the SUS, the System Usability Scale, or score. Now, this also, like Nielsen, has been around for 20 years. There are tens of thousands of case studies that have been done using this particular score. And there appears to be a reasonable correlation between those apps that are scoring in the B to A quartile and net promoter scores. So if we take an app through this process and we have 10 participants review the app and you come out at the end of it and you've got a B, then you probably have got a sticky app. An app that's going to be easy to use to onboard people, useful for the user to use in their day-to-day life, and something that they will recommend to other people. That's the end of my talk. And there's the reference list.
Does anybody have any questions?
Did I go faster than 10 minutes?
Questions are okay, yeah?
Question.
Got a question? Yeah, that's us.
I'll throw you my. So, what's the question, please?
So if you want to put like A/B testing in this human design system flow, where you can put that? If you want to like put A/B testing in
Yes.
that human design system flow, because this looks like the product is out and then the feature is decided by like some people like idea as like real people.
So at this stage, we're just prototyping. Right, so it's the early stage of shaping what's the product going to look like. When you've gone and built the real thing, you might then want to be able to do A/B testing to say, okay, 50% of my users logging on and go down this path, the other 50% down that path. And I've done that on a project which, we went live with a customer relationship app. And we weren't sure whether to tweak it this way or tweak it that way. This is something that you use in the project definition phase. And just like all rational unified projects, you can save yourself a ton of money by triaging stuff that you shouldn't be chasing.
Cool, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.